Souls Unitarian Universalist Church, building community, inspiring growth, creating change. Here in the heart of Kansas City, we come together to create this hour of shared reflection so that we might be renewed in courage for these times and inspired to lives of greater dignity, higher purpose, deeper generosity, and more effective action. If you are new to Unitarian Universalism or to our congregation, we want to get to know you and share a part of your journey. If this place is already your spiritual home, welcome back. We need one another, and it is good to be together again. We are so excited to be together in person again after almost 2 years of gathering only online during the coronavirus pandemic. Nevertheless, through the gifts of technology, we continue to celebrate community and connections with each other online also, as we lean into the values of justice, compassion, and reason. Together, we learn the love that has the power to overcome both loneliness in the heart and oppression in the world. Welcome to our service this morning. May the words and music and images that we offer today nourish our best selves, calling forth abundant wisdom and love.
Arise, O souls, all arise.
Welcome. Good morning. I'm Beth Andes, a member of All Souls, and it's my privilege to welcome you here on this gorgeous Sunday morning. Welcome to those of you joining us online. We thank you for your participation. At this time, we also welcome guests and visitors. We are glad for you to be sharing this time we have together. My fellow congregants, those who are visitors, will be wearing a stick-on name tag, so please take the opportunity, make a point of seeking them out after the church, and introduce yourself. Take full advantage of this possible start to a long and warm relationship. This morning, we welcome to the pulpit Carolyn MacDonald, a longtime member of All Souls and its Forum Committee. Today, she draws on a service presented by the Forum Committee in July of 2001. The focus is our fourth principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. This principle is as relevant today as it was in 2001. Welcome, Carolyn. And we now have some members of the search committee to introduce and give a special welcome to our minister, new minister, Reverend Erin Dajka Holley.
Ooh, I'm up tall, Carolyn. Thank you for the little step stool. That's fun. I'm usually so short. I'm Sue Trowbridge. I'm your board president, and I'm here to say how filled with gratitude we are to our contract search committee. Accepting this challenge last December were co-chairs Lynisa Robinson, and Bernie Brennan, and working closely with them were Carissa Stevens, Allison Hartnett, and Margaret Drinkwine, and Roma Lee Taunton was the board liaison. They spent, of course, many hours investigating and filling out various UUA-required forms, reviewing resumes, and formulating ways to assess candidates. Carissa is here to fill you in on some of the insights and details of that.
I feel very tall, okay. All right, so we were privileged to have Reverend Erin apply for a contract ministry job because Reverend Kendall understood that she was available and reached out to her, realizing she might be a good fit. Kendall was her professor in a class at United Theological Seminary in the Twin Cities and mentored her at First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis. Reverend Erin earned her BA with honors in religious studies at Grinnell College. She graduated from United Theological Seminary of the Twin Cities. She was ordained in 2018 and is currently working toward full fellowship. Among the positions she has held are minister at UU Church of Utica, worship coordinator at UU in Manhasset, New York, and digital liturgist in Columbia, Missouri. She has also taught OWL classes and co-chaired the first Universalist young adult group while in Minneapolis. Now, a word from Lynisa about upcoming events.
Reverend Erin's first sermon here will be October 23rd. We will have a welcome celebration for her on October 30th. And it now gives me great pleasure to ask her to stand up and be introduced to all of us. Can we give her a warm welcome?
They had to make everybody else a little taller because I lost 7 inches in an accident that I had. And so I needed something extra to stand on so that I could be seeing and you could see me. So I'm happy to see all of you here. I first came to the church here. I moved to Kansas City in 1970, and the person who hired me was someone who was a member of the church and used to talk sometimes about the church. And so I started looking at the Star. In those days, the Kansas City Star, usually on Saturday, had a page where they would indicate what different churches were doing that day. And I would see things about the forum, and so I started coming and ended up coming all the time. For some opening words, I'd like to read a couple of quotes here. The first one is from Anais Ning, who is wrote diaries, and she said, "When we blindly adopt a religion, a political system, a literary dogma, we become automatons, robots. We cease to grow." Then a book that I would want to mention is this one, Teaching as a Subversive Activity. And it's written by Neil Postman and Charles Weingartner. Now, when I looked at this book first, I was in the library. I was wandering around in the library, and here was this book. And I started out looking at it, and the first thing I came to was something right at the beginning. And I read that, and I began to wonder, why did I pick this book up? So when I first looked at this, it said, "Thank God there are no free schools or printing, for learning has brought disobedience and heresy into the world, and printing has divulged them. God keep us from both." And this was attributed to the governor of Virginia. Now, would you care to make a guess when that was? He lived in the 1600s. And so, in fact, that hopefully is not someone that we have people that are thinking of that now. Now, this book is called Teaching as a Subversive Activity. And one of the things that the authors wrote is, once you have learned how to ask relevant and appropriate questions, you have learned how to learn, and no one can keep you from learning whatever you want or need to know. And I was a teacher for a number of years, but I didn't consider myself subversive, but I think a lot of teachers who are actually doing the kind of work that we really appreciate would be thought of as being subversive by some persons. Now, one of the quotes that I really like is something one of our youth said 20 years ago. We have a Religious Odyssey program in the summer, and each time a person or several members of a family speak something about how they ended up coming to All Souls and what are the kinds of things that they believe in, and just generally telling us something about them so that we get to know them. Well, back in 2001, so that seems really recent to me, so I know some of you, that seems like something very, very long ago, that we had one of the dads in the congregation and his teenage son who were speaking on Father's Day. And what the son said at the Odyssey is, when talking about being at All Souls, he said, "I am really happy to be here where I can question my beliefs." And I thought, we're doing a good job. That's what we want to be happening. Now, one of the things that happened when I started to come to All Souls a lot is the church service was held in this room, which is called what? Bragg Auditorium. Now, Bragg had been minister at the church for a number of years. He had retired shortly before I came, so I was never here when he was actually minister. Now, he, in fact, lived a couple of blocks away from me, so I knew who he was, but I had not been here. But one of the things that tends to happen when we have ministers is there are certain times when they've written something or said something that we really like, and so we repeat this, and we quote former ministers, or we read something that they wrote. And what I want to do is I'm going to read something from that Raymond Bragg had written in a minister's column in 1970. So this was before I was actually here, but as I was able to read it. He first of all quoted something from Freud. He said, "The voice of the intellect," observed Sigmund Freud in 1928, "is a soft one, but it does not rest until it has gained a hearing. Ultimately, after endlessly repeated rebuffs, it succeeds. This is one of the few points in which one may be optimistic about the future of mankind." Then Dr. Bragg went on to say, "Like all sweeping summations of the human condition, this one is open to negations, to qualifying observation. But to contend with Freud, who certainly did not underestimate the role of the irrational, is a formidable undertaking. Religious liberalism has its deepest root in the rationalist temper. It is not mere rationalism. Without it, however, it becomes unstuck. So goes the thesis defended in the Unitarian tradition, week by week, month by month, year by year. The greats were not at one in detail or even in worldview. In adherence to the primacy of reason, they were one." Now we have one of our youth. Now I mentioned something a youth had said a number of years ago. We now have one who's going to help here with the chalice.
Let there be no departure from that which has been our nature, for it is as well our hope.
I had said I didn't want to have to light the chalice, that the youth will know how to light it and make it work. And I was afraid I wouldn't be able to make it work. So thank you.
Thank you, Shawn. Now, if rise as you are willing and able, and let's together affirm our covenant and stay standing for the song to follow. We affirm, goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
endless journey as we watch the baby grow. We thrill to hear imagination freely running wild. We dedicate our minds and heart to the spirit of this child, and we believe in life and in the strength of love, and we have found the time to be together, and we believe in age, we share the wonder of youth, and we believe that growing is an answer. We seek elusive answers to the questions of this life. We seek to put an end to all the waste of human strife. We search for truth, equality, and blessed peace of mind. And then we come together here to make sense of what we find. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found the joy of being together. And in our search for peace, maybe we'll finally see, even to question truly is an answer.
We sometimes need to have a story told to us when we're in church. And a story often can illustrate things in a kind of pleasant way without anyone feeling that they're somehow not doing the right thing. The story we have today is called The Answer Mountain, and I have freely adapted it by something written by Sarah Squire. And in fact, there's another version of this story that she wrote that's in one of the books put out by the Unitarian Universalist Association aimed at children. So the name of the story is Answer Mountain. A long, long time ago, there was a little town nestled in the shadow of a mountain. This is our mountain right here. And right there in great big letters, there was a sign that said, "The answer is no." Now, no one quite knew who put it there, how long it had been there, why it was there, but it was just really handy. Because if you had a question, you could ask your question, and you could look up on the mountain, and you could see the answer. And the answer was no. Well, Ma Custis was a woman who lived in that community, and she was trying to decide what to fix for dinner. Now, everybody in her family, except for one, hated liver. Her oldest daughter, that was one of her very favorite foods. She always wanted her mom to fix liver. And so Ma was trying to figure out what I should do. And she said, "Should I cook liver for dinner?" And of course, her daughter Janet was all excited, but then she looked up to see the answer on the mountain. And what did the mountain tell her? The answer is no. So the other children were kind of relieved because they were not too excited about having liver. So then they had to figure out what they had. And one of them said, "How about pizza?" And so Ma said, "Well, shall I fix pizza for dinner?" And she looked up to see the answer. The answer was no. Well, what about chicken? The answer is everything the children suggested, that anyone suggested, it always was, the answer is no. Well, finally, they just got tired of coming up with things, and the children went ahead and went to bed, not having had dinner. And Ma didn't get to have dinner either. And so she was trying to think, something is not right about this. And so what she did is in the morning, she rang the town bell, which meant everybody in town came running in. And she said, I think we need to change something. I think the mountain isn't helping us the way that it's always helped us. It is just not helping now. I think it should be changed. I think what it should say now is yes. And so the sign was changed to say yes. The stone carver had to do it. It would take a long time, and finally he was done, and he'd gotten the sign changed to say the answer is yes. When he got done, he rang the town bell so everybody could come and admire the new sign. So Ma thought, since she was the one who'd initially asked the first question, she had kind of started all of this. It was dinner time. She should get to ask the first question. And so she said, shall I fix liver for dinner? Well, she looked up at the mountain this time, and the answer was, the answer is yes. And Ma thought, yes, but everybody in my family, except for my daughter Janet, hates liver. My other kids said it would run away if I ever served liver again. What do I do? Well, sometimes kids are pretty smart. And Janet, even though she loved liver, had an idea. Why does the answer always have to be exactly the same? Couldn't we have more than one answer? Everybody in town thought, and finally they decided what they thought Mountain should say is, the answer is sometimes yes, and sometimes no, and sometimes wait and see, and sometimes I don't know. And they said to the stone carver, will you please carve this for us? And he said, oh, that is awfully long. When he had to carve yes, that took some time, but nothing like what that long thing would do. So he said, okay, well, I will try to carve it. But people are going to be thinking, I'm not doing anything. And so what do you put out? Like when you're seeing the things going on in our streets in the Kansas City, what happens some of the place where there's all kinds of construction and stuff going on? There'll usually be some kind of sign that warns us. And in this case, he made a big sign that said, under construction. So basically, what they knew was that the answer was going to be under construction. All the children grew up learning that every question could have a different answer. Some questions had more than one answer, and sometimes you couldn't even figure out the answer. Now, that's something like things are here at All Souls. We always have a lot of questions. One of the most important things, though, is one of our UU principles is that we should all try to search for truth and search for meaning.
Now let us sing our children out to their classes.
Go now in peace, may love guide all your ways. Beauty be the blessing of your nights and days. Truth on your lips and kindness in your deeds. Faith to follow where the human spirit leads.
Good morning. I'm Marley Murphy, and don't be alarmed. There's no mistake on your order of service. Even though you most often see me at the entrance of Bragg as an usher or sometimes up here as a reader, I am indeed here today for the ask of our offering. Now, your time is precious. It's a perfectly glorious fall Sunday, so I'm not going to beat around the bush. I hope to inspire you to give a little extra today by sharing what this church has done for me. And I don't know that I've ever said this out loud before. All Souls has given me the first and only safe place in 60-plus years to finally come out of the closet as an atheist. You see, I learned early on that at least here in the heart of the heartland, which is also dubbed the top stitching on the Bible Belt, that merely mentioning that you're an atheist can often end a new friendship, get you sent home from vacation Bible school in the 6th grade, strain a professional relationship with coworker, shut down a budding romance, or 2 or 3, arouse suspicion among your neighbors, and alert every evangelical Christian in a 5-mile radius around you that you, my friend, desperately need to be saved. And if you write a weekly newspaper column in various Midwestern newspapers for 30-plus years, it's also a quick way to lose readership. So for more than 3 decades, as I penned that column, I'd occasionally include conversational phrases like, "Thank the dear Lord," or "Thank you, Jesus," or "If there is a God," using a capital G with the clear implication that, oh, there is. And in my personal life, when the subject of religion came up, I was always very careful to say I was agnostic, because that seemed more palatable to people, even though it was a lie. But then one Sunday, sometime in 2012, I walked into this church. Sounds like a joke, doesn't it? A former newspaper columnist walks into a church, but I learned very quickly that I could have a whole church family here. I could have a tribe without having to believe in God. Anybody's God, any God at all. So I could freely admit to being an atheist, and nobody batted an eye. There was that one time at a dinner for 8 when someone next to me said, "But don't you believe in a power greater than yourself?" I said, "What, like the IRS or the sun, possibly?" And that is, I'm pretty sure, I've never been positive. I'm pretty sure that's when Ruth Robarge kicked her under the table. But anyway. But seriously, folks, what value can I put on that? On finding a safe haven where I can be my true self? And I don't think it's wild speculation on my part to guess that each and every one of you here did not come here to this church today by just driving around randomly, seeing the building and say, "Hey, that looks like a good place to hang out on Sundays. Let's stop here. Everybody out of the car." No, there's a reason you're here. There's a reason I'm here. So what value do we put on that? And maybe like me, you think, okay, well, that's priceless. This is priceless. And it is. But the reality is that our church is affected by today's volatile economy, just like our families are, just like all of us are. So I just want to ask you simply to remember why you're here, why you continue to be here, and give accordingly today as you're able. Thank you. The offering will now be given and received.
And now, will you join me in the dedication of the offering? We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create change toward a just and society.
We need churches and ministers who are concerned about and dedicated to the responsible search for truth and meaning, as our fourth principle puts it. Throughout its history, liberal religion has been committed to seeking truth, even at the expense of cherished doctrines and beliefs. Our religious ancestors believed that the way to truth involved reason, the use of our minds and our critical thinking capacities. And they insisted that reason be applied to religion as well as to other areas of life. William Ellery Channing, in his Baltimore sermon of 1819, the sermon that did for Unitarianism what the Declaration of Independence did to the 13 colonies, insisted that revelation alone was not sufficient for true religion, and that religious truths should be subjected to our God-given reason. If they are not reasonable, they should be abandoned. This insistence on reason led Channing and others, of course, to question doctrines that did not stand up to critical thinking, such as the doctrine of the Trinity, the divinity of Jesus, and the doctrine of human depravity. However, we are living in this postmodern era when many people have forsaken reason and instead are seeking truth and meaning in the irrational, the magical, and the supernatural. Millions of people use electricity and computers, but believe in the magical powers of signs and exorcisms in their private lives. To continue to use our critical thinking capacities in religion is to go against the grain of our culture. But I believe very strongly that we must continue to include critical thinking in our approach to life in general and to religion in particular. How can we know what is true unless we test our beliefs through our experience and through critical thinking? The consistent use of our rational abilities has made possible enormous advances in our understanding of the world and of human nature. Religion must not be exempt from the best method we have of ascertaining what is true. We should not leave our thinking caps at the door when we enter our churches. But let me be clear that I'm not suggesting a return to the sterile rationalism that has characterized our movement at times during its history. It should not be a matter of either reason or emotion. Both are necessary to life as a whole and to religion. I believe that reason should be in the service of feeling, and feeling should be in the service of what is reasonable. Ours is a religion of the head and the heart. A religion of the head only lacks the three most important things in religion: commitment, caring, and community. But religion of the heart only can become mere sentimentality.
When I've been thinking about the service, I spent a lot of time thinking about things when I was a child. And I want to say something, and this is not something that's on the schedule for me to say, but I will make a comment about offerings when I was a child. We've already had the offering here. But I grew up in a church where a family was given a box of envelopes at the beginning of the year. And there were two parts to each envelope. And in one part, you were put the money that was for the church. And in the other part, you were put the money that was going to be for mission-type activities of the church, of working with others, of helping others. And so when I was little, my allowance was connected with how old I was. So when I was 2, I was given 2 pennies each week for my allowance. When I was 3, I was 3 pennies. And at 4, then I had 4 pennies, and I felt quite rich. Remember, a penny could buy a little bit more 80 years ago than it can now. But the children were also given a little box of envelopes. And so each time I had an envelope, and there were 2 parts to it. So when I got 2 pennies for my allowance, I would put 1 penny in there, and then I would very proudly turn that in when the offering was taken from the children. This kept on going. When I got 3 pennies, I could put 1 in each envelope, and then I kept 1. And then when there were 4, when I got 4 pennies when I was 4 and was quite wealthy, sometimes I would put 2 pennies in each side of that envelope. And I was so proud of being able to turn in that envelope each time. Now, I grew up then thinking that, well, you're supposed to give money to your church, and you do things for the church itself, but also you need to help some of the other work that the church does. So I know you were all thinking about this in the offering before, but what I was thinking was my pennies and how I put my pennies in the envelope. Now, one of the things that we often do, which I mentioned before, is we tend to go back and look at what other ministers have said in the past. And so I'm going to read a few things that previous ministers have written, and then maybe you can guess which minister it was if you were here at that time, or if not, then I'll tell you. Here's what one of the ministers wrote. One of the aspects of Unitarian Universalism that makes us special is our use of reason. It is not that others are necessarily unreasonable, but we invite and even insist upon the use of reason in religion. Some years ago, I was reading political theory and came across an important and unusual understanding. The writer said that human beings too easily will opt for simple answers, which he called massification. A slogan or a stereotype can be substituted for real thinking. In the process of positive social change, we can be tempted to give way to catchphrases, what we now call sound bites. When we do this, we disserve our true goals of democracy, justice, freedom, and social equality. There can be no true citizenship, no true freedom, unless we offer as much of the truth as we know, honoring the full humanity of everyone involved. Freedom requires the full exchange of ideas and open discourse between those who differ. Now, in that part that I just read, the minister, it was Jim Eller, wrote the first part, but he was quoting another person. So talking about political theory and slogans and so forth, he was quoting someone else. Would anyone care to make any kind of guess of what kind of person he was quoting? It was Che Guevara, whom I grew up thinking, I don't know, I'm not so sure what I think about that person. Anyway, Jim Eller went on to say that the sentiments describe the nature of true democracy and the importance of open interchange, also important values within Unitarian Universalism. Some call it tolerance. Others call the use of reason in religion The free, open, and well-seasoned practice of intellectual interchange is important and even profound within the religious setting. We do not agree to disagree. We agree to differ, but with respect, goodwill, and even love. This is the spirit of this church and many UU congregations. Of course, one of the things that I was always especially interested in, still in, where there were conversations about things, were our forums. Now, each Sunday morning, we have certain things that go on that are going on every day. There are classes for the children, so that's a very, very important part of what goes on. For something that the adults go to, or you can choose, there's the forum. So every week there's a forum, and there's a speaker usually chosen from somewhere in the community who speaks about something of significance, and then there's a chance to have some discussion with the speaker afterwards. And then there's our church service, such as we are having here right now. And Jim Eller, in the comments that I had here, ended with saying, some have their way of religion, so do we have ours. And in the honest difference, we order our lives together. This is our faith. Now, I'd like to take a chance to, since I'm up here and have this book, I want to read a little bit more from the book. Now, the title of this book, do you remember what I said it was? Teaching as a Subversive Activity. And then there's like a subquote, and it says, a no-holds-barred assault on outdated teaching methods with dramatic and practical proposals on how education can be made relevant to today's world. Now, some people were rather concerned by the kind of things that the people wrote here. I was a teacher at the time, and I thought, well, that's pretty good. I don't mind if I'm doing something that someone might think of as being subversive. In fact, maybe I really like that. So this is an interesting book, and I was checking to see if the library still had this, and they had one copy that was at the Central Library. And so I didn't have my own copy anymore, so I got a copy of the library book to read this. One of the key things that we said in the service we've done, the title of it was, "To question is the answer." And we often have decorations on here that our minister, who can so well, will often make things. And I thought, if I could choose what's going to be there, I would choose a great big question mark as something that's representing so much of what we talk about. So remember that to question is our answer. Be sure that you question everything. Now, I made a point of wearing a t-shirt today that is an All Souls t-shirt. We've had a UU t-shirt, we've had many. And in the back, will someone read this for me so I get it exactly right, so I say it exactly right. Imagine a religion where people with different beliefs worship as one faith. And so that was my t-shirt I picked out today. And sometimes when I'm wearing one of my UU t-shirts, someone will see me and they'll say, "What does your shirt mean? What kind of church is that?" And so it's always an opportunity then to speak to people a little bit and show them that there are churches such as here where you are allowed to question, and questioning is very important and is valued.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. Now, I'll ask the congregation to rise as you are able and willing and sing with me song number 145, As Tranquil Streams.
Thank you. As Unitarian Universalists, we choose to undertake our free and responsible search for truth and meaning, and to respect the inherent worth and dignity of every person as we conduct that search.
We teach and care for each other when we tell the truth about the world. Our non-creedal way of faith requires of us the active formation and intentional articulation of our beliefs and values.
Our liberal religious tradition holds dear the principle of freedom of inquiry.
As responsible youths, we must take the time to question, to test, to learn, to form our beliefs, and to make informed decisions.
We are committed to the furtherance of justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, and the promotion of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all.